So first of all, welcome to the final event of 2021. We are very excited to have Beth Burrows from Knob Creek Jim Beam Corporation here. So Beth, we're excited to have you. Thank you very much. Typically, as you know, we would be selling our Knob Creek barrel pick, except that it was so good it sold out within a week and a half of receiving it about a month ago. So we actually coincidentally received the Woodford Reserve pick yesterday, so we're killing two birds with one stone. So if you didn't already purchase one and you're interested in Woodford Reserve, there it is right there. Come up and get it anytime tonight. Was anybody here on the Woodford Reserve pick? Jeff, Chris was. Jeff, were you part of Woodford? So thanks for everybody who was involved with that, so we're glad to have that. Our mission at the Big Bourbon Club is to help make bourbon more fun for everybody. And let me tell you how we're trying to do that. Number one is we are creating what we believe is the largest bourbon family on the planet. Now, we're not there yet, but we're getting there, and we expect to be there sooner rather than later. We also are trying to bring the best brands, the best bourbon brands and rye whiskeys to you, and the best stories behind the distilleries, and we've done a good job of that. And, of course, through the barrel picks, you're getting to taste it all. Just a reminder, most of you know, but there are really two primary levels of membership, Top Shelf, and there's a free membership. Top Shelf is $125 a year. With Top Shelf, all of the monthly events that we host throughout the year, there are 10 of them, all of those events are paid for through the $125. Otherwise, if you're a free member, it's $35 to walk in the door and to experience the tasting. We're doing one of these a month, and then we take off December and January, so we're off the next 2 months. In February, we have Watershed Distillery from Columbus coming in, and back on September the 11th, we had an all-ladies Big Bourbon Club ladies. They call themselves the Cask Force. They did a barrel pick, so we'll release that in February. We're excited about that. So if you haven't joined Top Shelf, we'd love to have you. If you prefer free, that's fine too. We love that as well. We're just glad you're here. So let me give you just let me give you kind of a year in review. So this is 1 year old this month, right? We started this, Cress and I started this at the end of last November. So it's a year old right now. So a high level. Right now, we have over 3,200 members of the Big Bourbon Club in less than a year. 270 are actually premium members, meaning that you chose to join Top Shelf. So that's roughly 10%, which is about what we were thinking it would be. 16 million or so, something like that. 16 million. We've been practicing this all week. Thank you for that. So most of you know that's how this thing was started, was through TikTok and the monkey business that I do on there. But that's a result of the national growth we had. So we have probably 500 members in the Louisville metro area, and the rest of the members are all over the country. We have 400 members in the Dallas Metroplex. It's crazy. We have 200 members in the D.C. metro area. So it's all over the country. We really want to use this proprietary app that we have to really launch it and grow it to much bigger numbers than that. But as I said, once a month, we do a tasting with a major distillery or brand. So let me just review what we did in 2021. We started in March with Limestone Branch. Peerless came out in April. Horse Soldier flew up from Tampa to present in May. New Riff came in June. Luca Mariano, July. Heaven Hill in August. I'm missing a month somewhere. It doesn't matter. Uncle Nearest was actually August. Old Forester. We had Wilderness Trail last month, and tonight we have Knob Creek. So that's a pretty darn good lineup for the first year of a startup bourbon club. Was anybody here at every one of the events? Callahan's, you all were probably here for most of them, I know. Old Forester, they were September. Yep, I missed that one, so I haven't been to all of them. And then on the picks, we've done 6 picks. We did a Yellowstone pick that was released in March. We had a Peerless Double Oak pick. We had a Luca Mariano pick. It was their first ever Kentucky barrel pick, which we're excited about. We had a Wilderness Trail pick, which we have a few bottles left up here. Come on in, ladies. Alice, good to see you, sweetie. We had a Woodford. We've got the Woodford that was released yesterday, and of course Knob Creek, the 9-year-old 120 proof. We sold it out in a week and a half, so we'll have to do another one. We also did a field trip out to Colorado, where we visited Law's Whiskey House, met with Al Laws, and then we did a barrel pick in Carbondale, Colorado, with Marble Distilling. Marble Distilling is going to come in from Carbondale. It's a very boutique distillery, but they have great bourbon, and it's Colorado bourbon. Oh, excuse me. Anyway, they're going to come here in June of next summer. Sorry, it was just a natural reaction. They're coming in June of next summer to present the barrel pick. So anyway, that was this year. We did a lot in our first year. We're excited about that, and we couldn't do it without you, so we appreciate it. We've also done picks that will be released next year. So we've already done the watershed pick I mentioned. We did a maker's pick. Thank you to Mr. Michael Beam here who put that together as well as tonight together. But we did the maker's pick. We'll release that in the springtime. We did an Ezra pick just a couple of weeks ago. And then we did the marble that I just mentioned. So we're excited about all of that. So with no further ado, it's been a great year. We're planning hard. We've got some really cool things in the hopper for next year. And we'll tell you more about that through the app and through however we communicate with you as we firm updates and whatnot. So with no further ado, the reason you're here is for Ms. Beth Burrows and Knob Creek. So Beth, come on up. Thank you.
Hello. There we go. Sorry, it said mute on the top. I can read, I just can't operate an entire microphone. Hi, everyone. How are we? That was moderately terrible. Hi, everyone. We're going to try this again. Hi, everyone. How are you? There we go. Much, much better. The more you get whiskey in your body, the better this is going to get. You haven't tasted yet. It's fine. I won't hold it against you. So thank you so much. I really appreciate being here. Thank you all for coming out tonight. My name is Beth Burrows. I'm the American Whiskey Ambassador for Beam Suntory here in the home place of Kentucky, which is a lot of words that essentially mean that I travel and spread the good word. Over the last 2 years, there's been a lot less travel. Honestly, over the last 6 months, there's been a lot more travel. So very happy to be out and about and seeing people and talking about these wonderful brands. I cover all of the American whiskeys under the James B. Beam Distilling Company. So that's everything from the Knob Creek that we're tasting tonight to Booker's, Baker's, Basil Hayden, anything with Jim Beam on the label, Old Overholt, Old Crow, Old Grandad, the list goes on, Legent. So I cover all of those amazing brands and get to come and talk to fine folks like y'all about all the different things, from our distillery to our family history to what we're tasting as we go through it, the brands themselves, the tasting notes, how to taste, which y'all are probably seasoned pros at this point. But we'll walk through all of that tonight. So you all have great Knob Creek in front of you. I'm going to walk through a little bit of family history, and then we'll get to sipping, because I don't want you to just have to sit there and look at it. That's just hateful, right? So at the James B. Beam Distilling Company and the Beam family, we have over 226 years of history with our family crafting whiskey. It started way back in 1795, and that was with Jacob Beam. So he was actually a farmer. He was settled in Maryland, and he made his way down to what is modern-day Kentucky with a still on his back and farming knowledge in his brain. And he started to farm corn, of course, right? Because that's what we did here in Kentucky. And from there, he had excess grains. So he really just decided, what are you going to do with those excess grains? You're going to distill them, right? Because you don't want them to go to waste. So he started becoming, a farmer first and a distiller second. And then when it came time for him to pass along this family business, he passed it to his son, David. And David was not much of a farmer, y'all. He decided family business was not for him. However, the distilling side of it was definitely for him. So David switches us over from a farming family who happens to distill to a distilling family who happens to farm their own grains. The time comes for him to pass it along. He passes it to David M., his son, and David M. really brings us into what we know now as kind of the first. I didn't do that. Hello. There we go. Brings us into that first really growth of American whiskey in the U.S. He puts us in a spot where we are next to a railroad so we can ship our grains in, ship our bourbon out, next to what is now the telegraph line in Kentucky so they can actually communicate with people and gets things moving through the end of the Industrial Revolution. He lays that groundwork for what we were going to be able to do. He also created a little brand called Old Tub. Anybody here ever had Old Tub? Awesome. We re-released it. It used to be only a distillery release. It came in a little 375 bottle. Super cute, adorable. Not enough whiskey in one bottle. So we decided to go to 750, a whole large bottle that's out in the world now that you can purchase and enjoy. It's 100 proof. It's bottled in bond. It's honestly one of the best bang for your bucks whiskeys out there. I would say that even if I didn't work for the company. Promise. It's really, really good. But he was really responsible for bringing Old Tub into the world. And also bringing James Beauregard Beam into the world, because that's his son. And what we are named for is our fourth generation master distiller, Jim Beam, right? A lot of times people are like, why would it be the fourth generation that you decide to put the name on the bottle? One, it's got a nice ring to it. But two, he got us through World War I, Great Depression, that terrible thing called Prohibition, and now I like to talk about the Spanish flu of 1918, because we all know what it's like to live through a pandemic. Before, we didn't really talk about that, but he got us through that period of time as well. And so he put in the work. He was really the person that got us through this really, really hard stretch of time in the United States, and that's why his name is on the bottle. So after Prohibition was repealed, Jim Beam, at the age of 70, had purchased the Claremont distillery that we're in now. So has anybody been to our distillery before? Claremont, Kentucky? Amazing. We're reopening on Saturday. Very excited. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. But Jim purchased that distillery. It was the Murphy and Barber distillery at the time. And he purchased that and thought, Prohibition's a fad. It's really not going to last very long. Surely to goodness, we're going to be able to get up and running. And then 13 long years later, he was like, maybe it wasn't just a fad, but we had this distillery that he was utilizing as a limestone rock quarry. So we were still trying to, make our buck. We did not make any whiskey during Prohibition. We did not have a medicinal license. So the only one of our brands that made it through Prohibition was Old Overholt, and that was because we didn't actually have it as a Jim Beam brand at the time. But that's another story for another day. But as we get through that period of time, 70 years old, he gets the distillery up and running in 120 days. So just to put that into perspective, a small craft distillery now takes about 18 months to get up and running. Now, granted, a distillery back then was for operation purposes. A distillery now is not only operation, but also tourism, right? So there's a little bit of a difference, but still, 120 days, that's pretty quick, especially at 70 years old. And then he said, I'm done. I've put in all my work. I did what I need to do. And he passes it along to his son, T. Jeremiah. So T. Jeremiah Beam is really known as our first global ambassador. He gets us into over 150 different countries, and he traveled the world spreading the good word of what was happening at the James B. Beam Distilling Company. And from there, anybody here ever had a decanter in their home? Maybe a Beam decanter, seen one? Been to any auction or sale or garage sale in the state of Kentucky? You've seen a Jim Beam decanter for sure. T. Jeremiah is responsible for that. At the time, after Prohibition or during Prohibition, we switched our focus. People moved away from American whiskey. They started looking at imports like Irish whiskey and things of that nature. They moved to rum. They moved to clear spirits by the time we hit after Prohibition. So people just moved away from bourbon. T. Jeremiah said, well, we've got a lot of bourbon. Why don't we put it in something that people want to put on their mantle? And oh, by the way, it happens to come with some nicely aged whiskey inside. And that was really kind of how we got things out the door. And if you've seen those decanters, we have everything from a chainsaw to a national convention to each state has one. If you've ever seen I Dream of Jeannie and wondered why Jeannie was so happy, the bottle she lived in, Jim Beam decanter. Zero joke, it really was. They painted it. It was like the first year it was in black and white, so they just used the Beam bottle. Second year or third year it went into color, and they just painted the bottle that nice white and pink and purple that everybody knows it to be, but it was a Jim Beam decanter at heart. So if you ever rewatch something on TV Land, you're like, that's why she's so happy all the time. Or why the spells go wrong, right? One of the two. But he did that to really just get us moving, keep us going, getting us into all these different places. T. Jeremiah did not have any children, though. So when it came time for him to pass it along, he looked to his sister's son. So you're going to see that switch over of last name from Beam to No. Okay? So Booker No, y'all have probably heard of him, right? Booker's. So Booker No was the grandson of Jim Beam. He was also the nephew of T. Jeremiah. So he takes over the family business. He starts innovating, doing things differently. At this point, there's really no precedent for whiskey, right? Aside from the fact that in 1964, Lyndon B. Johnson put forth the standards of identity of bourbon, which everybody knows, right? We'll be quizzed on that later. Make sure you drink all of these, and then you have to give them to me one by one, or else you... Cool? All right. So once those standards of identity were established, other than that, we weren't really seeing a whole lot of stuff pumping out and really getting out in the world. So he started innovating. He started thinking about what's next. How can I really kind of push the envelope of what we know as American whiskey in the bourbon category and do something different? So he came up with a small batch category. So there was no small batch before Booker No. He really created that category, and it started with Booker's. So late 70s, early 80s, he started pulling aside barrels that he liked a lot. And then he started bottling them up and giving them as gifts. And eventually people said, you know what, these are really good, you should probably sell them. And so it got to a point where he actually put it out into the market in 1988. So he's being interviewed, and during that time, as he's tasting, one of the people who were interviewing him called what he did to taste the Kentucky Chew. And that's where the Kentucky Chew was born. Has everyone here ever heard of the Kentucky Chew? Gone through it? Okay, half of you have, half of you haven't. Great. When we start tasting, we'll walk through it anyway. I'm going to pull somebody up and just make sure that you actually know how to do it. It's going to be you. So he really just established this new category. He started doing things that were a little bit different. He wanted to really show that it took a lot of talent to take a smaller number of barrels, mingle them together, and create a consistent, delicious flavor profile. We all know that single barrels are very unique, right? It was something individually that you're going to taste the brand, but you're also going to be able to taste the subtle nuances all the way through. And so from there, he said, I don't really like that. I want to see what I can do with just a smaller number of barrels, and if I can make something that is going to be unique and different and special, and it birthed the whole category. In 1992, the rest of the small batch family came about. So in 88, Booker's is released to the world. In 92 comes Basil Hayden, Knob Creek, and Baker's. That's Baker's with a B, not Makers with an M. So each one of them is very special and unique and has a place in that spectrum. When we're talking about Basil Hayden, it's 80 proof. It's a high rye bourbon mash bill, right? So it's still got at least 51% corn, but that secondary ingredient of rye is twice the amount of rye of our traditional mash bill. And Basil Hayden has a different yeast strain. Knob Creek, which we'll talk about here in a second, was also released. And then Baker's is 107 proof, 7 years old, and named for Baker Beam, who was the cousin of Booker. Baker lived at the distillery, grew up at the distillery, literally was born on the grounds, raised on the grounds, and now lives a mile away from the distillery. The man has spent his entire life at the James B. Beam Distilling Company, and he had spent a lot of time making sure that Jim Beam 4-year was going out, was getting into the world the way that it needed to be. Especially as Booker was innovating, we had our Claremont distillery, but we also had our Boston facility. When I say Boston, I mean Boston, Kentucky, not Boston, Massachusetts. It's not very far. It's one exit down from our Claremont distillery. But because of that, he was really innovating, doing different things. Baker was there to help keep things moving. And so when it came time for Baker to retire in 1992, Booker said, I want to put your name on a bottle. I'm going to make it the way that you like it, 107 proof, 7 years old, just where you feel like that sweet spot is. What do you want for it? What do you want for me to put that name on the bottle, excuse me? And he said, $1. So Booker gave him $1, and to this day, that dollar is framed in Baker Beam's home. Baker is 85 years young. He just turned 85 on July 31st. Super, super special guy. Very humble, very amazing, and of course, very influential when it came to the whiskey profile. But from there, Booker, when he was ready to retire, passed it along to his son, Fred No, who is our current master distiller, 7 generations, right? So Fred has really gotten us through this bourbon resurgence. He is the reason that each one of the small batch categories has grown. So we started with the families, right? Just those 4 brands. Booker's kind of had a family in and of itself because we were doing multiple releases each year. We used to do 6. More recently, we do 4, right? It's a quarterly release. So Booker's family has been growing for a long time. Then we saw the Basil Hayden family start to grow, right? We started to see different expressions come out of Basil Hayden. And then the Knob Creek family as well was growing simultaneously. So we not only had Knob Creek small batch, we start to see Knob Creek single barrel, where we can do those selections, Knob Creek rye, and then all of the expressions that have come in between, whether that be the Knob Creek, what was it called? The Quarter Cask. There was a million different releases that we've done in the last probably 6 to 10 years where you see Knob Creek family growing. And then most recently, the Baker's family started growing because we were able to take it from a small batch and move it into a single barrel. So still 107 proof, at least 7 years old. A lot of them tend to be a little bit older. But that family is now growing. So all of those small batches have grown underneath the watchful eye of Fred No, who is our current master distiller. And he has been bringing his son up, Freddie No, as our 8th generation distiller who will take over as master distiller eventually. He's 34, still says, I'm not really a master of anything yet. I'm still learning every single day. I was talking to him today, and he said that his granddad told him that you have an opportunity every single day to walk out of the grounds of this distillery and have learned something. And if you didn't learn something, you're losing passion. And he takes that to heart. He really, really does. And now that we have this distillery, which we'll talk about here in a minute, you really start to see his growth and everything that he's going to be able to do as we move into this new wild world of whatever it is that we're moving into for whiskey, right? And American whiskey as a whole. So now that you got the history, tests are coming at the very end, we're going to drink. Yeah? Fantastic. All right. I like that enthusiasm. I heard one big woo. So you've got your tasting mat here that has all 3 of the ones that we're going to taste in a row, but as well as a special one, which we'll talk about here in a minute. So the first one we're going to do is all the way on the left-hand side. It's going to be your Knob Creek Bourbon. All right, this is going to be 100 proof, 9 years old. We are the only people that I am aware of that had to take an age statement off of our liquid at one point in time because we just didn't have enough. Thank you for drinking excessive amounts of it, friends. We really appreciate it. But we had to get that supply back up. So we got it back to a point where we could put the 9-year back onto the bottle. And I'm not aware of any other brand that has taken an age statement off and been able to put one back on. It was incredibly important, though. For this brand, for what Booker had it as its identity and what he really, really loved Knob Creek to be, was super important to him. So for those of you that have not done the Kentucky Chew before, we'll walk through it real fast. But the first thing you always want to do is assess your liquid, right? So you want to hold it up to the light, sort it around that glass, check it out. Look at that nice amber color, right? Start assessing a little bit about that liquid, right? You can tell because it's a darker amber color that it's probably a little bit older. If I didn't tell you what was in the glass, you could start assessing those different things, right? The next thing that we want to do is slightly part your lips, put it up underneath your nose, and take a nice inhale. And the reason we want to part our lips is so we don't get that straight alcohol burn directly up our nose. We've all done it. It's terrible. Nobody likes to singe their nose hairs, right? So making sure that you slightly part your lips, you're going to get that nice aeration and really start to get some of those subtle intricacies. So this is where I put you on the spot. What do you smell? And if you say bourbon, you're kicked out. Vanilla, fantastic. Caramel, great. What else do we smell? Maple, all right. Tobacco, all right. So the coumarin is really starting to come through. That's like a pipe tobacco, right? So it has those nice baking spices with a little bit of an edge. Cherries. So are we talking like ripe cherries, cherry pie? Grenadine, okay. Anybody else? Cool. Solid start. All right. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to take a sip. We're going to chew it all the way around our mouth. You're not necessarily going to swish it like a wine, but you do want to make sure that it hits your cheeks, the roof of your mouth, your tongue, your gums, everything, right? You want to assess exactly where it's hitting you on your palate. You're going to swallow for the finish in what we call the Kentucky hug, because hugs are good and burns are bad. Some are just going to hug you a whole hell of a lot harder than others. Just wait till we get there, right? Then you're going to smack your lips and exhale. Smacking your lips is going to aerate everything inside of your mouth. Exhaling is going to make sure that you don't trap that proof on your palate. Promise it's not as hard as it sounds. It's a lot of words. It looks like this, all right? Yeah? All right. So take that sip, chew it all the way around. Make sure that it hits all the parts of your palate, everything in your mouth. Swallow for that finish. And then smack your lips and exhale. There it is. All right, when I'm assessing my liquid, first thing I want to do is talk about where it hits you on your palate. Because for some of you, this may be your first sip of whiskey in the evening, right? You're priming your palate right now. Where does it hit you on your palate? There are no wrong answers. Everyone's probably going to be a little different. Back of the palate? All right. Anybody get sides? Sides, all right. Tip of the tongue. All right. A lot of the front. Okay, so you're very frontal. Fantastic. Now the hug. This is my favorite thing to do because it takes people out of the normal thoughts of thinking about bourbon and the way that we think about it. If this was a real hug, like if we personify this whiskey that you just tasted, what kind of hug would it be? Is this a church hug? Is it a side hug? Is it a nice grab and let go? Is it a long, like, haven't seen you in forever, pull you in, hold you tight kind of hug? Side hug? Booty squeeze? Yeah, where are we at? Nice little side hug? Hold you for a second, let you go, but doesn't fully commit? All right. We're not talking about you, we're talking about the whiskey. It's just a different way to think about it, right? Everybody has hopefully been hugged. If you haven't, please come see me after this. Make sure that you get your first hug, right? But as we talk about it, I think that a lot of times when we talk about whiskey, it's always great to nerd out, but whiskey is for everyone and because of everyone, and we want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable talking about it, right? So the ways that we can take it away from being a little bit, I don't want to say snooty because it's not necessarily snooty, but you know what I mean? Take it out of the category of talking about things that people can't relate to and bringing it to a place where you can definitely relate to it. Everyone's had a hug before. Hopefully, right? And you can kind of assess it that way and start talking about it that way. I love to personify my whiskeys. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's a different way to look at it. And it's also a lot of fun to talk to people about, right? All right, so we tasted that. We figured out where it was on our palate. We've established that it's a side hug, maybe a little bit of a booty grab, depending on who you are. All right? Just a small one. It's fine. We're going to have you guys go ahead and pick that up one more time. We're going to assess it again. We're going to talk flavor profile this time. So do your Kentucky Chew one more time. So for some people it hit side of palate, some people it hit back palate, some people it was a little bit more front. What are we tasting? Anything from the nose carrying through, the caramel, the vanilla? Yeah, those are carrying through pretty well. Did your cherries carry through on the palate? Yeah? Did you say toffee? Toffee with a T or a C? Okay, awesome. Yeah, definitely. And then how's that finish? Lingers for a while, right? Hangs out for just a minute. A little bit of heat, yeah. That 100 proof comes through. Then I always like to tell people, if you have water in front of you, I always like to add a couple drops of water, especially if you're tasting something for the first time. I think it's super important that you taste it neat, then you taste it with a couple drops of water, and then throw in the rocks if you want to go the rest of the way, right? Because the way that I like my knob may not be the way that I like my Basil Hayden, may not be the way that I like my Booker's,
Hey,
right?
Beth, so we're streaming live on Facebook. Cale Seals in South Carolina just wrote in. He said, I need a hug.
Virtual hugs. Send them all.
He said, and a butt squeeze, too. No, he did not say that. I just made that up.
Listen, he can pour his own whiskey and squeeze his own butt, all right?
Cale.
So how do we feel about it? Like it neat? Nice. If you got some water, go ahead and add it in. I always say if you got a straw, that's great, but I like to do the bougie pinky, where you just dip your pinky and then sling it in. So then you're only going to get about 2 to 3 drops, right? And as we're tasting something in a sample size, that's all you really need. Just a couple of drops off your finger to kind of get that opening up of your whiskey, to taste some of those different complexities, taste it in a different way.
Beth, did you mention the mash bill on this expression?
I have not mentioned the mash bill on this expression. So this is our traditional Jim Beam mash bill, right? So it's going to be corn, rye, and then malted barley. The distillation for us is where the differences lie. So in each one of our brands, we have a lot of brands that go off of the Jim Beam mash bill and Jim Beam yeast strain. Now that Jim Beam yeast strain, too, we didn't really touch on it. The Jim Beam yeast strain was caught wildly in Jim Beam's windowsill in 1935. He caught it, he propagated it, and we've been propagating it ever since. We are one of the only distilleries. I don't want to say we are the only because I don't know who else, and there's probably somebody else out there, but in a room of 250 distillers, our distiller stood up and said, I propagate my own yeast. And he was the only one in the room that had. There's nothing wrong with box yeast. There's nothing wrong with the way that other folks are doing it. But for us, that funky nuttiness, and I say that super affectionately, comes from our yeast strain. And without that yeast strain, we would not be able to make Jim Beam the way that Jim Beam is loved and adored, nor the rest of our brands. I find that nuttiness tends to manifest itself a little bit differently in each one of our brands. So for me, the nuttiness in Knob Creek is like a candied pecan. That's what I get. It's a little bit mouth-drying, a little bit astringent, nice and sweet, but that's how it comes across. Jim Beam itself, peanut. Jim Beam Black, almost like a caramel color, like a payday, right? So like that caramel-covered nougaty peanut. Baker's for me, a little bit more like a walnut. Booker's tends to be like a whole candy bar with peanuts. Personally, that's what I feel. And like I said, this one is a bit more of that candied pecan. So that comes from our yeast strain. So with Knob Creek, we're going to distill it at 120 proof through our first distillation, through our low wine. Our second distillation is going to be 130, okay? Then we're going to bring it down to proof to 125, put it in the barrel, and let it go. It's going to age for 9 years. Inside of that 9 years, too, we have to think about the barrel itself. Super important in the process. Our yeast is important. The process in and of itself of fermentation, distillation is important. But then we leave it in a barrel for 9 years. That means a lot of its life comes from that barrel. Each barrel is made up of 32 to 33 separate staves all around the outside of the barrel itself. Has anyone here ever been to a cooperage? Such a magical place. One, you can't beat the smell. There is nothing like the smell of charring barrels. It smells absolutely amazing. But other than that, watching someone raise a barrel is absolutely astounding. In less than a minute, they take 32 to 33 different staves from different trees that look like they wouldn't go together at all and get them to fit inside of a hoop and then move along to the next piece. It is one of the most fascinating things to watch. And because that barrel is so incredibly important, you know, we're looking at different trees with different tannins, different ages, so many different pieces of wood coming together to create this amazing experience for the whiskey for 9 years with Knob Creek. And then the barrel heads coming from different trees too. So you have so much influence. I want to say there's about 1,000 chemical reactions that happen instantaneously. As soon as the distillate hits the barrel, starts happening, right? When we char the inside of that barrel, it's like damaging it, but in a good way for us, right? So you damage the inside of the barrel. Think about when you accidentally cut yourself, right? Your body rushes platelets to fix the cut. When you damage the wood, its platelets is sugar. So the sugar rushes, and that's what we utilize as it breathes in and out of the barrel to pull those sugars back in and create the whiskey that we have in front of us. So one of those ways that we think about the barrel being important, but when you actually break down the barrel into each one of its components, you realize how incredibly important and unique it is, which is why single barrels that live next to each other in a rack house for 9 years can be so incredibly different, right? Those sister barrels can be really unique. All right, cool. We're going to move on to the next one. So right there in the middle, we've got our Knob Creek Rye. How many fans of rye do we have in here? Yes. It is a growing category. It's growing really, really quickly. And I'm super excited to talk about Knob Creek Rye specifically. How many folks have had Knob Creek Rye before? All right, a few of you. Fantastic. So we're going to go through that Kentucky Chew, and then we'll talk a little bit about the liquid itself. So feel free. Nice amber color. It's going to be a little bit younger, right? So that 9 years amber color that we got from our Knob Creek is going to be a little bit darker, a little bit deeper. This one we're looking at more like 6 years. Get in there. You're good. So aromatically, what do you get on the nose? What do you get from Knob Creek Rye? Nothing? We got waters going around. If y'all need one, just go ahead and put your hand up. So just in comparison to our Knob Creek bourbon, what do you all see as a difference in the Knob Creek Rye? Smooth? Spicy? Like rye spice? Okay, fantastic. Okay, a little bit of cayenne spice, so a little bit of heat. Where's it hit you on your palate? Yours is front, yours is back, sides. All right. Middle back. It hits me as well. Now, when we ask that question, and there's so many different answers, it has so much to do with how you live your day to day, right? If you all ate anything spicy, if you smoked a cigar, if you smoked a cigarette, right? All of those different things are going to change the way that things hit your palate. So there's no wrong answers when it comes to where does it hit you. It's just a unique experience for you. And I love to hear where it is for each person. What about that hug? If Knob Creek Rye was a person and giving you a hug, what kind of hug would it be? Nice grip? Snuggle in. I like it. Knob Creek Rye's a snuggler.
You said snuggle in.
Just, you think it's a booty out hug? All right. Okay, yeah, just like a nice little booty out hug. Don't want to get too close, but like you're doing it. All right.
What's a booty out hug?
One of these.
Oh, a booty out.
Yeah, where you stick it out.
I'm sorry, I'm 58. I didn't know what that meant.
It's timid, right? It's just a little bit of a timid hug. All right, flavor profile. Do we get the caramels and vanillas like we did off of the Knob Creek? Not as much, yeah? So we've got the rye spice, he said cayenne. It's definitely delicious, right? So with this Knob Creek rye, it's what we affectionately call a Kentucky style rye. It's not a real thing, we just made it up. Roll with me here, all right? So when we're saying that, what we mean is that the rye has to be at least 51% rye in order for it to be considered a rye whiskey. So we're gonna be closer to that number. And then our secondary ingredient of corn is going to be there and prevalent. So when you think about rye, you think about spicy grain, right? It's going to be spicier. It's going to be bolder. It's a little bit more in your face. It's also harder to distill with. Corn is going to be sweet. So having that corn to balance out the spiciness of the rye, this sips a lot differently than the 95 to 100% ryes on the market. Nothing wrong with those. They're absolutely delicious. However, this just sips differently. This is a bourbon drinker's rye. It really is. I mean, the way that it sips, the sweetness that's there, but it's not overwhelmingly there. It helps people kind of step into the rye category.
So,
and
Beth, what's the MSRP on this bottle?
I don't do numbers. You do numbers.
MSRP on the rye? So it's a very affordable,
yes,
delicious rye.
For sure. 100 proof, holds up, exists in the market. You can get it everywhere, right? So it's not just something that we have in this state or that state. Any
idea how many cases annually you would sell of that, or is that too specific?
That I'm not quite sure, but I would be happy to get the number back to you.
That's okay. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, it is growing. Like I said, each rye category is growing, and our ryes are growing as well.
So let me, hey, everybody out there in the audience, raise your hand. Would you prefer a rye like this to sip on or a bourbon like the first Knob Creek Expression? If you'd prefer a rye to sip on, generally speaking, raise your hand. Raise it high. So maybe close to half.
Yeah.
So raise your hand for the bourbon. So maybe 60% bourbon and
yeah.
Wow. What do you normally find rye versus bourbon in general? What do you?
It's growing, and it also depends on where I am. In Kentucky, bourbon generally overwhelmingly wins. If I'm in Ohio, Pennsylvania, I'm going to start to see that rye kick up because that's the birthplace, right? The Rust Belt is the birthplace of rye whiskey. PA is the birthplace of rye whiskey. So when I'm in those territories, people tend to be sipping on that a bit more.
Beth, do you mind if we switch subjects for a second? We've got several questions coming in from Facebook, and some of them are off of the Knob Creek, but other bean brands, if that's okay. But the first one is from Alex Cowling in Little Rock, Arkansas. We call him Arky Cowling. Are there any new releases for any of the Jim Beam families coming up you can speak to?
There will be. This year we're pretty much tapped out. Little Book Chapter 5 came out, which was super exciting. You're going to see that as an annual release. You're going to start to see a couple different things coming out. We've already seen Basil Hayden's, right? We've got Basil Hayden's and the Dark Rye. The Dark Rye has been a permanent line extension for us. Toast came out this year, so if you've not had Basil Hayden Toast yet, that's a super exciting brand with toasted barrels.
So raise your hand if you've tried the new toast.
Nice. I do not.
So,
Bourbon Festival drank me out of Basil Hayden Toast.
So let's talk about that just for a second. It was a hot release.
It was.
It's delicious. How is the world receiving it?
everyone that I've talked to really enjoys it. It's different and very delicate and special. And people have really received, I mean, with Basil Hayden, you're always going to have the folks that say, why is it 80 proof? Yeah, Basil Hayden is going to be 80 proof. That's just the staple of Basil Hayden. That's what we release it at. So that's really just been really the pushback is why can't we get a cast? If you want a cast drink Basil Hayden, go drink Little Book because Little Book was one of the components. One of the components of Little Book 4 was
Toast in all 50 states?
I'm hesitant
limited?
to say that, but I would say the majority of states should see Toast. That being said, just like everyone else, we are having supply chain issues. Our bottles, our closures, all of that stuff is a little bit more difficult to come by, so the releases have been a little bit more sporadic than we would have intended. So it is a permanent line extension. You're going to be able to continue to see it. How many people here have seen the new bottle? Gorgeous, right? Huh? They have it here? Fantastic. They have it here. So if you want to taste it and you haven't tasted it yet, it is here and available for you to put liquid to lips.
And we're talking Toast still, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
He said the toast is here.
Yeah. I had his first bottle. I know. Go look at TikTok. We've had Toast up here.
There you go. All right. Fantastic. I love to hear that. I definitely enjoy it.
So so this is a question for me. So different distilleries talk about Toast differently. How many chars do you use in that barrel, and how do you use Toast relative to the chars?
Okay, so our char is a level 4 char. For all of the whiskeys that we put out for a normal, I mean, this is obviously came out as a limited time offering in the very beginning, but that level 4 char is what we do. Now, the secondary aging is going to be in a proprietary toasted barrel. So we have a contract with Independent Safe Cooperage, so that's in Lebanon, Kentucky, Lebanon, Missouri. They allow for us to have a proprietary toast that we then age as a secondary aging process and then bring it back into. Yeah.
So did you just say that you remove it from the original barrel that it aged in, put it in a new toasted white oak barrel?
Yes.
For how long? 6 months, 8 months?
It depends, right? It's
right.
all on flavor profile. But we are going to also have to char that barrel for it to be considered bourbon. It has to have at least a level 1 char for it to be considered bourbon.
So is Toast less than level 1 typically?
So you toast and then char.
That's right.
Yep.
Okay.
And so from there, this liquid itself also contains brown rice. So it's
Say that one again.
brown rice liquid strain. So taking out the rye and adding in brown rice. So that's why you're going to get subtle differences. That's why you're going to get a different flavor profile. How many folks were around when we did our Harvest collection? It was 2014. It was released in December of 2014. They were all 375 bottles. It came out, there was a high rye.
Was that a basil?
This was a Jim Beam signature. Yep.
Okay.
So we had a Jim Beam signature that was released. It was 6 different releases of these 375 bottles. It was high rye, triticale, or triticale, however you want to say it. It was brown rice, rolled oat, red winter wheat. I'm missing one. Anyway, those were the 6 releases. They were out in the world, and nobody knew about them. 6-row barley, thank you. So all of those came out. People had no idea what it was. It was under the Jim Beam label, and people just didn't really delve deeper. That brown rice, 11-year, by far my favorite liquid I have ever tasted, ever in the history of all liquid. I will seek it out and find it. It's still on shelves. I was just in Washington, D.C. I bought 3 bottles. So it is Jim Beam Harvest Collection. So if you saw the signature craft that came out, that was a 12-year. We did a quarter cask. Those were in the 750 milliliter bottles. But these were part of that release. They were just the smaller bottles. It's an 11-year brown rice liquid. Absolutely top anything that I've ever tasted. I would lay down on railroad tracks for it. I definitely love it. But that's why I got super excited about brown rice being utilized as a grain inside of, some of these different brands. We are distilling brown rice liquid. We're going to see it, coming through with Basil Hayden Toast. We're going to see it in other places. So super, super exciting stuff. The distillate tastes very different. Thankfully, they called me because they know how much I love brown rice. And when they were distilling it this past summer, they called me and said, hey, do you want to come down and taste it? And I was like, absolutely. I put clothes on specifically during COVID to go down to the distillery and taste this brown rice distillate. So yeah, it's... the sweetness, the softness, it hits your palate so differently. The grain itself just lends to something very uniquely different than what you would typically have in bourbon, right? We're used to the corn sweetness, which we all know and love. We're used to the rye spiciness. The malted barley we don't really taste, right? It's just there for enzymatic processes. But that extra something, not wheat sweet. It's just a different kind of delicate sweet that you get out of brown rice.
So do you?
A little bit thicker. Yeah, a little bit thicker. It gives you a little bit more viscosity on your tongue. It was a release in December of 2014. The end. One-time release. I just happened to go around the world and find the bottle.
So, Cress, you would need a time machine to go back 8 years.
Because it's 11-year brown rice that was laid down a long time. You think about that. Like, it would have been laid down in 2003. So that was still under Booker's regime before Booker passed away. So maybe eventually they might. I don't know. Our distillation streams are very different. When we start talking about the distillery, the new distillery, we have the Fred B. No Craft Distillery on property now. That's where Freddie is doing all of his innovations. That's where we have smaller stills, smaller fermenters, where we can run through the process and really start to figure things out in a different way.
Hey, Beth, do you remember at the beginning when it was really quiet in here before anybody had any sips? And now it's getting really loud. Let me ask your favor, please. Just as you speak amongst yourselves, just kind of whisper if you don't mind. So
the whispers get louder with the more alcohol they consume.
Yeah, they do. Hey, so Beth, do you like Japanese whiskey?
I do love Japanese whiskey. You said like, I say love.
Do you love
I love
Does it hug you and grab you? And
it does, in all the best ways. I fortunately was able to go to Japan right before the shutdown.
Okay, so let's do this. Let's transition quickly. Any questions in the live audience? We've asked several from Facebook. Any questions so far of Beth on any of the Beam products, on any of the Knob Creek expressions?
Boston's a couple times a year. It's because it's not open to the public, and it's a little bit less conducive for people to walk through. But I will put on my steel toes and walk through about twice a year if Jason Capel will have me.
I drove about 3 minutes down the street, and it always smells when we cross the railroad tracks.
There was a person in whiskey for a different family that we won't mention right now, but they always said something I took to heart. They said the smell when you walk onto the distillery, right, and it just kind of hits you. First you hate it, then it's home. And I always thought that was one of the coolest things, because when you think about it, like especially when we see people on tours, sometimes people bring children and stuff, and you see kids walking through the distillery tour like this because they can't handle it. And then the adults are just like, let me breathe it in. I've missed it so much, right? So, I thought that was always a cool way. And it becomes a home sense. Yeah, just like bring it in. I want to smell it all.
All right, we had a question back here. Yes, ma'am.
That is like picking children.
Now, hold on. Just say it louder. What is your favorite?
What's my favorite whiskey? Okay, well, this is the answer I love to give. It depends on the day of the week and who's paying. That's really a deciding factor for me. I think each one of these whiskeys, and this is going to be a diplomatic answer, but it's really the truth for me, each one has its own place, right? Like if I have a meeting at 11:30, 12 o'clock in the afternoon, probably going to be sipping some Basil Hayden, because I won't make it through the rest of the day if I decide to have Booker's at that moment in time. But really, I tend to go towards 100 proof or higher. Baker's has a special place in my heart, not just because the liquid is amazing, but I also love Baker Beam. Like I could go on a million tangents about him. And just that liquid itself is so unique and different and special. Been sipping a lot of Old Overholt. The Old Overholt 11-year that came out in PA and Ohio is one of my faves, my go-tos. Again, I'd say if I had to say an all-time favorite, it would be that brown rice 11-year from the Harvest Collection.
All right. Are there any direct descendants of Jim Beam in the house? If there are, stand up. Stand up, Mike. Stand up.
I have to sit down.
So, Mike Beam, what is your favorite all-time whiskey?
She has the right answer. I mean, every day of the week presents a new challenge and something different to behold. But Fred told me one day, he said, a bottle of Booker's can make a good day bad really quickly, or a bad day good really quickly. And I live by that motto.
Yep.
But other than that, I do love single barrels. Single barrels change every
Yep.
Every time you go to try it, and I know I sat down with these guys and sat in this exact room when we picked the Knob Creek single barrel, and two of the barrels were less than probably 20 feet from each other. But you couldn't tell you would not know when you taste it. So each time you tasted it, it just changes and it grows on you. So, but
Mike, who did you say gave that quote?
that was from Fred.
Fred?
So Fred, so I heard another quote from Fred, our good friend Greg Cossey told us, and Fred was drinking with his dad or grandpa or whatever, whoever it was, and he said they opened up a bottle and he took the top of a brand new bottle and he threw it away. He goes, we won't be needing that anymore.
Seems about right.
There's one more thing I want to say. There is no wrong way to drink whiskey.
Nope.
You drink it how you like it. Everybody else can pucker up because, you know, Fred would say his mom liked it with a little ginger ale in it, and Booker was 6'7", but never gave his wife anything however she wanted to drink it. That's how he made it for her. So that's kind of a rule I live by. You're the one drinking it. You're the one paying for it. And if someone tells you how to drink it, then maybe that's not the bar or establishment for you.
Yep.
So always drink it how you like it.
Any damn way you please.
All right, any other questions out in the audience? I think Ryan's ready to get to number 3.
Yeah?
Have we finished number 2? Have we talked about the rye enough?
Everybody feel comfortable? We well acquainted?
Do we have any more questions?
Your best friends,
Yeah, let's
so-
go. You want to go to 3?
Moving on? All
Let's
right.
do it. Let's move on.
Fantastic. So this is going to be our Knob Creek Single Barrel Select Rye. Okay, so this is going to be the single barrel of rye, 115 proof, right? So we're moving up from 100 proof to 115. Again, talking about single barrels, they're going to be a little bit different, each one to each one. So if we nose this one, what are the aromatics on it? What do you get?
Didn't get it. So
wow.
Mike, pour me one.
How terrible. Hard to pinpoint? It's definitely got a sweetness to it in the nose, right? So like maybe a little bit of a marzipan. Yeah, definitely having a sensory kit is super helpful. Super, super helpful. If you haven't done a sensory kit at home, it's pretty easy. You just start putting things in vials and close the top on them. Things like black pepper, right? Like peppercorns is a good one. Having things like caramel, vanilla. Because distinguishing between vanilla and caramel there are two very different things, right? So when we're talking about vanilla, we're talking about the vanillin that forms in the wood. It's going to be a little bit more earthy, right? So it's a sweetness, but it's an earthy sweetness. Caramel is going to be like or the butterscotch candy, right? It's going to be like, or Werther's, that's what I was trying to say. The Werther's candy, that's what we think of when we think of caramel. All right, go ahead and do that Kentucky Chew. Where's it hit you on your palate? Tip of the tongue? 115. Definitely goes up in proof. I hit mid to back palate and then my lips. What about that hug? Good hug? Feel fulfilled by this hug? Fantastic. This hug completes you? What was it? I love all these uncomfortable hugs. I feel like this needs to come with a therapy session. A chest bump, all right.
What did you, hold on a second. Hold on, we have a comment over here. Come here. Here, no, come here. You're on camera. What did you say about the hug?
About what?
Oh, no, it was over here. It was all the way over here.
Stand up and say it louder. I'll walk over. Oh, come over. All right, I'm coming over. Hold on. I'm going as fast as I can.
Okay, this hug is when your teenage son's best friend gives you a hug but holds on for a few extra seconds where it's slightly uncomfortable but you slightly like it.
Does anybody need
I
a
don't even know how to
translation of
dissect
that? Yeah, was there a booty grab at the end of that extra long hug? Okay, I don't think we need a translation.
I love it. By the third, it goes off the rails. People are like, this is a church parking lot hug. I was like, what does that even mean? What are you doing in the church parking lot? All right, what about the flavor profile? We talked about what we were getting on the aromatics. Did any of those carry through? Is that some Axe body spray I taste? Y'all got it. Nobody else did. It's fine. It's fine. I'm here for you. I have a 16-year-old son, so I'm like, aggressive. How do we feel about it? We like the 115 proof? Tight hug. Hold you close. Slightly uncomfortable for some people. Awesome. Questions, comments, happy thoughts about anything Knob Creek bourbon that we've tasted, the Rise? As far as, like, so it's completely subjective. Yeah, it's 100% subjective. We write tasting notes to help guide people. I typically, when I'm doing my tastings, don't like to tell people anything about it, because when I say, oh my gosh, I get a hint of blueberry, they're going to be like, oh my God, me too. Right? Like, the power of suggestion is so strong. So I always try to kind of like allow the crowd to tell me what it is that they're tasting and how they're feeling about it. That way we can kind of build off of that. Otherwise, you just, again, that power of persuasion and suggestion is just, it's so aggressively strong. But I always like when people are able to take it and kind of pull it back to something unique to them, right? So whether that be, oh, this tastes like my grandmother's sugar cookies, or this feels like Christmas, you know, or whatever. This feels like the holidays at my family's home. This feels like my grandmother's garden after a spring rain, whatever, write poetry. But I always like to kind of walk through that process and see where people feel things fall. But the more you can create it as something unique to you, right? We all know that our smell is tied incredibly close to our memories. So you can get that whiff of something like you were talking about earlier with the distillery, right? You smell it and it automatically takes you back to that moment in time. And I think that when you have whiskey and you start to think about things that way, it allows for you to make, one, a personal connection with each one of the things that you're tasting. And now not everything's going to have that, but try to pull from your memories. One, because it's always going to make sure that you remember what it is that you tasted in that whiskey. So when you go back to a bar and you see 200 American whiskeys on the back bar and go, this one felt like XYZ. This feels like home, whatever it might be. All right. We going to the fourth one? The piece de la resistance?
All right. Can before we go to the fourth
Yeah.
one?
What's up?
Well, I'm up right now, so I'm going to ask a question from Facebook. But I gotta look at it.
Do you want me to hold it over here?
No, my trusted sidekick Hillary's texting me questions from Facebook. Here it is. Thomas Reed out of Springfield, Tennessee asked, how many barrels do they produce of Knob Creek per year?
Okay, so I don't have the exact breakdown of Knob Creek per year. We're filling a barrel at our Claremont facility about every 16 seconds. So it used to take, like back in the 40s and 50s, it took about 10 years for us to put 1 million barrels into a warehouse. Now it's looking about every 16 months. We're filling quite a few. And that's with one still operating from the Claremont facility. We then have the Boston facility, which has 2 of those stills operating. So we're filling a barrel about every 8 seconds there, which is aggressive and amazing. So with that being said, aging-wise, I want to say that we have around 2.6 million barrels aging right now at our facility.
So what's the number in the state of Kentucky? 5 million total?
It's about 9 million total.
9 million.
Yeah.
So you have a third of the total.
Yeah, we're a third of all of the bourbon.
Big
that's
dog.
aging. Yeah.
Big dog.
Yes,
Wow.
we're definitely a top guy. I mean, we have the #1 selling bourbon in the world with Jim Beam White Label. So
Say that again. Jim Beam White Label is the #1 selling bourbon
in the world.
in the world.
Yep.
Is Jack Daniels the #1 selling whiskey in
Tennessee
the world
whiskey.
still?
Yep.
But you're the #1. Wow. Raise your hand if you knew that Jim Beam White Label, we all knew it was very popular. Did you know it was #1 in the world? Hold on, everybody. My wife's calling. No,
You have to take it with the microphone.
Oh, I love her, but I'm
On
not going to
speaker.
take it.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Interesting. Most of the time, you can find both of them side by side on the back bar. Maybe it's, when was this? No idea. Yeah, no, I don't know. It is the #1 selling. It's usually in most places, like when you're in the Caribbean, when you're in random exotic locations. All of a sudden, that's all you see, right? Yeah, those are the two, and it's always just, do you have bourbon? They're like, here's the two options. They always pull Jack Daniels into the bourbon category, but yeah, it's I'm really disappointed in you that you didn't say when in Rome. I feel like that was a missed opportunity.
All right, so let me take over for a second, Beth. Hold on, everybody's excited. I'm excited. You excited?
All the time.
I'm a little nervous. So let me it's a Tuesday night, so Cress and I decided a year ago we're going to do most of our events on the second Tuesday of the month. We try to create a little rhythm that local folks would know when we always do it, right? And it's worked well. And then in the summertime, June, July, August, we've chosen Saturdays for the out-of-town membership to come in. But raise your hand if you're from the Louisville metro area. Raise it high. So pretty much everybody. Raise your hand if you're not, if we have anybody from out of town. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what we're going to do is, where are you gentlemen from? Lexington. So I'm going to give away a bottle. This is the last bottle of Knob Creek Barrel Pick that Big Bourbon Club did. It's the last one. I've been holding it in my trunk, and I nearly opened it 6 times.
Listen, trunk whiskey is important.
But I'm going to give this away to the person who's traveled the furthest to be here tonight. Where are you gentlemen from? I'm not talking to you any longer. Amarillo, Texas, come on up here. Let's go. So we've got a Big Bourbon Club member from Amarillo, Texas. Him and his buddies flew in. They landed at 7 and just pulled in.
Look at you.
How you doing?
Good.
Good to meet you in person.
Thank you. You too.
What you doing on this trip?
Well, myself, along with my two brothers from Whiskey Happens, follow their YouTube channel. Got together. We're actually hooking up with 3 other bourbon TikTokers tomorrow, and just come in to do some tasting. And last minute, one of them said, "Hey, what about this Big Bourbon Club thing?" And I said, "Hey, I'm game. This is my first time here, also theirs, and it's an event. Let's do it." And here we are.
Means you're members of the Big Bourbon.
Yes, we are members of the Big Bourbon Club.
Amarillo, Texas.
All the way out there. Thank you. This is amazing. No. Sorry.
Never mind. Gentlemen, welcome to Louisville. Good to have you. Good to have you. Thanks for coming.
Cheers.
All right. So on a Saturday in the summer, you didn't just say I'm Pookie Bourbon, did you?
Spooky.
Well, good. I'm glad you're spooky and not Pookie.
I also
Oh.
love the everything pause. Do you know who I am?
He just said he was Pookie Bourbon. No, he didn't. He said Spooky Bourbon. Great to have you. On a Saturday in the summer when people can travel because it's not a work week, 80% of the crowd, right, Crest? 70, 60% are out-of-towners, not in-towners. The in-towners go down to the Nolan Lake, I guess, and the out-of-towners come to Louisville for the Big Bourbon Club event.
Love it.
All right, Beth. I'm going to hand it back over to you.
All right. I don't have anything to give you. You already had it sitting at your seat. So there's no massive giveaway, but we will taste on this last guy right here. So this is our Knob Creek 12 year. How many people have had Knob Creek 12 before? Handful of you. Awesome. If we were going to talk about my favorite releases from our distillery over the last couple of years, this is going to take the cake. I am in love with this whiskey. I think it is absolutely fantastic, but I'm going to stop talking about it and have you taste it. So dive in. This is 100 proof. Where's that hit you on the palate? Sides?
You know, this reminds me of when I have 4 boys. It reminds me of my boys' girlfriends come over and give me a hug a little bit longer than...
Off the rails. We are off the rails.
And Suzanne wasn't home either. No, I'm just joking. I'm just joking. Relax.
They're all over there. Yep. So I think that the 12 has a lot more of the cherry notes in it. And when I look for a Knob Creek, I love cherry barrels. And when I say that, I mean flavor profile of cherry. We're not like putting it in cherry wood, right? But I think that definitely comes through quite a bit more. You get a lot more of the oak coming through on the 15. For me, sweet spot is usually 7 to 12 years for my flavor profile preferences. Just because when you start to get over 12, you start to get a lot of oak, and I am not a huge fan of that oakiness. It's a little bit too astringent for me, tends to be a little bit too mouth-drying. I mean, the Knob Creek 15 year is still delicious, but this 12 year is exactly my sweet spot. Like, it has all of the things that I love. Where is it? In your glass. No. The bottles, it's a permanent line extension, so you're going to be able to pick up Knob Creek 12 year all over the U.S. and all the stores. Yep. 15 was going to be a limited time offering. So if you got your hands on the 15, congratulations. You're one of the lucky. Other than that, you're not going to. Yes. Knob Creek 12 is the second release of Knob Creek 12 year should be in stores now.
Beth, I'm sorry. Say that about the Knob Creek 12 one more time, please.
So Knob Creek 12 year is available to folks in the stores, and it's a permanent line extension. So it's going to be something that comes out continuously. The 15 year was a limited time offering, but you're going to start to see age-stated limited time offerings coming out of Knob Creek each year.
So we've got a question from Steve Higdon live. I got a question.
Okay.
The Knob Creek 12, to me, and I mentioned earlier before we started tonight, the 123.4
Yeah, the cast strength.
is as good as anything I've ever had in my life.
Yep.
And this is right on the heels of it. The Knob Creek 15 I did not like.
Because
Any reason why there's be such a difference, do you think?
I think it's the oak, right? So that oak infusion that you get after 12 years, you're starting to get into, you're breaking down the barrel, right? We think about alcohol. Alcohol is a solvent, so it is breaking down that barrel. And during that time, we're going to go past that sugar layer, and we're going to breathe into the wood. So the deeper we breathe into that wood, the further away we get from the char.
So it kind of makes sense?
So it does make, it depends on what your personal preferences are. There are some people that love oak. They love the astringency. They love kind of how that hits their palate. For me, not as big of a fan. So generally, even when I'm sipping my whiskeys out of my American whiskey portfolio, I'm probably going to be doing it neat, just because if you add the rocks to them, it tends to get a little bit oakier. So because of that, I typically sip neat. There will be occasions. If I want it to go down a little bit quicker, rocks always helps.
All right, any questions? So we're sipping on the 12. Any thoughts, any questions, any concerns? Andrew.
I like to finish with
question.
happy thoughts.
Any questions? Can I have another?
There's a bar over there,
Can
and
I
your money is good.
That's a legitimate question. All right. Any other questions? And I'm not yanking you. I'm just seeing if Ryan.
So with Beam Suntory, I've been in the role of American Whiskey Ambassador since 2016. So I'm at 5.5 years at this point. Prior to that, I ran Down One Bourbon Bar. So I was operating a bourbon bar, delicatessen ice cream shop. Had the opportunity to do some really cool stuff with that. One, just because I'm a Yankee, so I really enjoyed making sandwiches. Yes, where are you from? Fantastic. Whereabouts? Western, Eastern? Okay, fantastic.
Isn't that where all the rich people live, up in northwestern PA?
Sorry, people. It is, it's pop. So when I moved here, I got made fun of so terribly that I learned very quickly when everyone said, hey, you guys, let's go to the pop stand and get a soda, that it's y'all and everything is Coke. So, yeah, I got in like a really confusing conversation with people when I was like, no, I want a Pepsi. And they're like, cool, I'm going to go grab you a Coke. And I was like, no, I want a Pepsi. And they're like, yeah, a Coke. And I was like, what is happening? Where am I and why is this going on? But yeah, so being a Yankee, being able to do, the delicatessen was awesome. And then having the ice cream shop, I was in a very unique space. I was in this industry as the bourbon boom was really taking off. And so I had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with folks that I probably would have never had the opportunity to do that with before. We were talking earlier about just kind of taking a step back and going, we're really lucky. We're really spoiled. Like, we are very spoiled here in the state of Kentucky to have people in our backyard, to have so much history, to have, everything at our fingertips, and all of these people who are super accessible, because everyone in the whiskey world is just a normal person. Even though they're bourbon celebrities, they will, sit down with you, shoot the shit, have a glass of something. They're probably wearing tennis shoes and jeans. I don't understand why that is the master distiller uniform, but jeans and tennis shoes is where we're at.
Are they jorts?
No jorts.
Okay, good.
Jorts are outlawed at distilleries.
Thank you.
Always have to have the long pants, right? No, but I think that it's a super cool thing. So I was able to craft ice creams with people, different master distillers, where we would infuse in nitrogen, we would make it with nitrogen. So we were able to do truly alcoholic ice creams. So that was really cool. I was able to host bourbon dinners and do all sorts of stuff. And so a lot of times people say, how did you get this job? One, very lucky. Happened to be in the right space in the right time with the right people. I had made the right connections. But also having master distillers that I had worked with write letters of recommendation for me. So my letters of recommendation came from Fred No, Dave Pickerel, and Wes Henderson. Those were my letters of recommendation for this job. And it's because I had that opportunity to sit with those folks and really get to know them and really, figure out what it looks like to move forward in whiskey. And they testament to the family that we have, right? It's a bourbon family. It's sibling rivalry. We want to be the best. However, we're there for everyone else. We're there to pick them up if they fall. We've seen the fires happen. Unfortunately, when Heaven Hill had its fire in '96, we got to see how amazing it was for all the other distilleries to pick up and say, we're going to distill for you. We're going to age for you. We're going to do this. When we had our fire, right, people were there to help us. It's one of those things where this is a family. We're going to, again, compete with one another. We want to be the best. We want to be the top guy. But that's just a friendly sibling rivalry. We're always there for each other as time goes on. You had Heaven Hill, Bernie Lubbers. He used to work for Beam. We spend a lot of time, we go out probably once a month to sit and, just talk, right? We're trying to get an ambassador.
Is he funny when you just talk to him?
I love Bernie. He's hilarious.
No, he presented for Heaven Hill this summer. He's hilarious.
He's amazing. He sings much better than I do. I can't play any instruments. Sorry, I'm not going to sing you any bluegrass. But, being able to do those things, that was really my soiree. But as far as being in the industry, I started sorting beer bottles in the basement of my parents' bar when I was 7 years old. So I take that as my first time in the industry. So I've been in this for a really long time. Went to school for sports administration. Thought I'd be like the next Aaron Anders. Then decided, whiskey's fun. So I went that route instead. But that's really, kind of my background and how I got into it. But being a bartender, being a competition mixologist, if you want to use those words, I like to light a lot of stuff on fire in front of judges. Legally, no arson, promise.
Beth, we're not closing out, but you've been as good as any presenter we've had. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You really have been. We do have a question from Facebook.
Okay.
Derek Burgess is a member of the Big Bourbon Club from Utah. And despite what you think about Mormons, and I don't even know that he's Mormon, he loves bourbon.
Amazing.
And he wants to know about the packaging with Booker's. How did you come up with that? What's the uniqueness of that little wooden box?
So that was Booker. Booker wanted to do something that was, when we talked about Booker's originally, right, it was more of a gift for people. And he felt that having this, it was his liquid to give to the world. And so he packaged it that way. If you look at the label itself, it's handwritten. That is Booker's handwriting, right? As we started to go into the later 2010s, we start to see the names of the batches pop up. Each one of those names ties back to Booker and his life in some way, shape, or form. So all of the pieces, the wax dip, the handwriting, the box itself, that's all what he wanted to kind of separate his whiskey from the rest of the whiskeys on the shelf. So it looked like a present. Every time you were opening it, it was a gift to yourself. And he was able to, really kind of create that with the packaging. And you see that with Little Book as well. You see where Freddie has taken that. It's now in Freddie's handwriting. It's the same bottle shape. There's a wax dip. There's the box. Because, he is truly Little Book. That was his nickname growing up. That's why it's the name of the brand. He is a Little Booker. Annis, who is Booker's wife, used to call him Little Book, usually because she was upset. And she was like, you're just as ornery as your grandfather. And this is, your Little Book. But what was that? What did you say? Did you say words? Never mind. Okay. Thought you said words. So, yeah, that packaging is definitely carried through with Little Book. And something that Freddie is super proud of and really, excited. That first bottles of Little Book went to, one was buried with Annis, one went to his wife, one went to his dad, one went to his mom. Those are where the first bottles of Little Book went, because it was incredibly important for him, for all of the people who had such a hand in raising him and helping create the world that he lives in, to have that first bottle. So when Annis unfortunately passed away a couple years ago, she was buried with Booker, and a bottle of Little Book went into the ground with her. So, yep.
So, Beth, this is, we've got another question. Are you single?
Am I single? It's a loaded question. We'll talk
Well,
about
that's the question from Facebook, from Bob Bright up in Boston. But he's not asking for himself because he looks a lot like me. He's asking for Thomas Reed down in Springfield. But he asked the question, are you single?
Complicated question. Well, let's go with the Facebook. It's complicated. Check mark.
Okay, it's complicated, and I'll just give you a hint. Thomas Reed, his nickname is Brown Sugar. Don't screw this up and say no.
I say, if you're going to court a lady, you don't do it through a Facebook message.
Oh! Now, again, this was a friend courting on behalf of a friend who probably didn't ask for it. Good answer. Good answer.
That's excellent.
I don't think in Boston they know how to court. I think that's a Southern thing we do, but I think so too. I think so too.
Huh? We try to stay out of there, but.
So, Sarah Hines, do you have any questions? You've been awfully quiet tonight. Are you enjoying tonight?
It's amazing, right? Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
So let me ask you. Let me just kind of do a quick straw poll. We've had 4 expressions. Let's go favorite. Do you remember what they were in order? And if
Do you
don't,
remember what you tasted tonight?
if you don't, read your guide. The Callahans. Those damn Irish are so smart. Okay. Raise your hand high, and it doesn't matter because we all love what we love. Raise your hand high if number 1 is your favorite expression. 1, 2, 3. We've got 5, 6. We got 6. All right, number 2, the first rye we tasted. 1, 2, 3, 4. The single barrel rye was number 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we've taken a lead.
We have.
The 12-year-old.
I feel like it's overwhelming.
Oh,
favorite.
my goodness. I told you tonight that the Big Bourbon Club loves stronger, more complex bourbons.
Yeah.
And I think
This
that
is-
explains it.
It's the guy, for sure.
So tell us about Ladies in Bourbon. Tell us about the olfactories and the taste buds, because we all know that ladies have more and better taste buds. And what is your thought on all of that, and how does that make your experience tasting a bourbon different than a male's, in your opinion?
So first and foremost, we touched on it earlier. I think whiskey is for everyone and because of everyone. And the more we think about that and relate to that, I think is one of the most important pieces of it, right? Because we wouldn't have American whiskey as a category if it wasn't for everyone in this country. That's the people who lived here, our indigenous folks, whether it be people who were able to come over to the United States, whoever it was. It made whiskey what it is, the American whiskey dream that we have and live now. It's because of everyone. Now, that being said, it's also for everyone. So I absolutely abhor when people say, this is a woman's whiskey, because that's just, it's such a pandering thing, right? That's to say that just completely disregards where people are on their whiskey journey. I feel like everyone's on a whiskey journey. Some people just started a little sooner than others, right? So it depends on where you are in that journey as to what your flavor profile and your palate is going to like. Has nothing really to do with your sex, your gender, however you identify, your race. None of that factors in to what you like inside of the category. It's all about your experience. That being said, it is said that women have, better tasting abilities. We happen to have just a little bit more of an elevated way of tasting. But that's, again, a blanket statement, because there's a lot of women that smoke cigarettes that have a terrible palate compared to a man who doesn't smoke cigarettes, right? Or, someone that also just completely ignores an entire group of people who are non-binary, right? So, I don't like really gendering something. I don't think that that's really an important thing. I think it's more important to say, where are you in your whiskey journey? Where did you start? Where are you now? Where do you want to go? So that's really kind of how I feel about the gender thing. Now, that's not to pull away. Being a woman in whiskey is different. It's a different experience. There's not as many of us. We deal with a lot of shit. We have dealt with a lot of shit, but I was behind a bar, and guess where I dealt with a lot of shit, guys? Behind that bar.
So we got a question. Are you single? No, that's just a joke. That was just trying to be funny, but it didn't go over well.
It was
Go
close.
ahead.
You were almost there. So close.
I am so close.
But yeah, so I think when it comes to, talking about the female experience is important as we talk about what it's like to be a woman in whiskey, experiencing whiskey. I think it's important that we talk to all people, that we're not just saying this is for XYZ person because of XYZ reason, because each person is different. Like we were talking about earlier, Annis liked to drink her whiskey a very specific way, and nobody ever said anything to her. She was, just for comparison, Booker No was about, what would you say, 280, 300? If not bigger than that, 350. Yeah, right? He's about 350, 6'5". Annis maybe was 5 foot tall and 100 pounds soaking wet. And I will tell you who ran that family when it came time, right? But that being said, it didn't really matter the fact that she was a woman or that she was married to a master distiller. She drank it the way that she liked it. And I think that it's really important to just really look at it that way. Look at it as, where are you in your whiskey journey? Never really saying, there was a brand that came out, I want to say it was about 2014, and it was women's whiskey. Never hit shelves, friends. You know why? Because it's fucking pandering. It's not going to do well. That's not what we're here for. We're here to create great whiskey. We're here for everybody, and it should be enjoyed by everyone if they want to enjoy it.
So Beth, you've been incredible. I just got
Thank
a
you.
text from a friend of mine that we've actually asked a question on Facebook, but he just wrote me. He said, I know where some of that brown rice liquid is. I'll bring some in January. A local store has all 6 bottles of the Jim Beam Signature Craft Series.
Amazing.
Little Rock, Arkansas.
There it is.
All
Road
right.
trip, friends.
All
Road
right.
trip.
And he also then said, Beth has been absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
4 exclamation points. Great presentation. Hate that I wasn't there.
Aw, appreciate it. We wish you were here.
Great job.
Come
So
back next
let's
time.
do this. As we always try to do, let's do a stand up and let's give a cheers to Beth,
Aw, thank
to
you.
Mike Beam, and the Knob Creek Jim Beam family. Thank you so much
Thank you.
for coming out to the Big Bourbon Club.
Cheers.
Here, here. Toast to Beth
Cheers.
and Knob Creek and Mike. Here, here. Hold it up for the picture. Hold it up. Particularly the better looking ones. Turn around and look at the camera. You okay with that?
Everybody say
All right, everybody suck it
whiskey.
in. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Cheers. Mike, thank you so much for putting this together.
Appreciate you, Mike B.
Beth, you've been as good as we've had.
Thank
you
you.
so much. Cheers.
Can I give one more thing?
We can stay all night if you want.
I won't make people do that, but I will say we have been under construction for 18 months in Claremont. We open this Saturday.
Hey,
Right?
so hold on. I was going to ask another question. Listen up. Listen up, everybody. 18 months they've been under construction. Jim Beam and Claremont open Saturday, but give them one last teaser, not that you can commit, to what maybe we can do with Big Bourbon Club next summer.
So we're going to try to work out getting y'all down to the distillery. We want to get you the experience, whether it be in smaller groups or however we need to do it. Can't commit to anything, but we would love to have you in Claremont at the home place to see all of the new things. For those of you that have been there before, it'll look subtly familiar because it's still the home place, but everything is much different. The American Outpost is where you're going to be welcomed, where you're going to buy your tickets, you're going to be able to buy your merchandise. Looks very, very different. The experience in and of itself, being able to see the Fred B. No Craft Distillery, it is going to be a very limited access into there because it is operational. But even the experience of walking through the distillery is different. Like, I don't want to give it away, but there is a sensory overload of awesomeness when you first step foot into the distillery. The Beam Made Bourbon area. And I'm sure you'll be able to see it on social. People will start posting it. There will be a lot of things. But I got to walk through it today. I was very fortunate to see all of the things that we're doing. And it's a pretty special experience.
You told me 3 years of construction in 1 year, essentially, right?
It was 5 years of phased construction in the last 18 months.
All right, so that means I'm within 40% correct, which is about where I'm at, right? Directionally correct, factually wrong.
Listen, just know where you are in the world. You're fine.
Beth, give me one of those hugs. The one that she was talking about.
I was like, is it the booty out hug? What are we doing?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thanks. Hey, listen. We've got a big calendar for next year. Stay close. Thanks for being a part of Big. And it's just kind of weird to say, but it's November 9th. Happy holidays, right? We won't see you to February, so cheers, everybody. Stay safe.